Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'd like to share a special behind-the-scenes look at my work-in-progress murder mystery, titled The Aesthetic of Silence. While the story is set in the present day, its heart truly beats in the 1960s. The novel revolves around the profound bond between two women, Leah, a young woman navigating modern life, and her grandmother, Chloé. Chloé is a true icon of the 60s, a woman who lived fiercely and freely in the Bohemian atmosphere of Paris, crossing paths with legends like the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and Edie Sedgwick. It is her unapologetic, open, and rebellious mentality that profoundly shapes Leah's own way of thinking and living. The mood of the story is deeply steeped in the artistic, literary, and cinematic masterpieces of that era. You'll feel the melancholy of Françoise Sagan's Bonjour, Tristesse, the decadent beauty of Luchino Visconti's The Leopard, the enigmatic neutral zones of Patrick Modiano, and the raw energy of the French Nouvelle Vague. To explore these characters and the rich 1960s aesthetic that inspired them, I'm sharing a special audio overview with you today. In the spirit of transparency, I want to let you know that the podcast conversation you are about to hear was generated using Google's NotebookLM. I hope you enjoy this deep dive into the world of Leah and Chloé.
Imagine you are sitting in a classic Parisian bistro. The midday sun is, streaming through the window, hitting those scuffed wooden floorboards.
Oh, that sounds perfect right about now.
Right. And the smell of brown butter and lemon from a fresh sole meunière is just kind of hanging in the air. The clinking of glasses is this steady rhythm in the background.
Yeah, setting the scene.
And right across the table from you, between sips of crisp white wine, you are about to uncover a family secret that completely rewrites every single thing you thought you knew about your life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you realize the story you've been living is a ghost story, and you didn't even know it.
It completely shatters the illusion of, normal everyday life.
It totally does. And that is the exact moment we are dropping into for today's deep dive. To understand how we get to that bistro and, well, what that secret means, we have an incredibly rich stack of sources to go through.
We really do.
We're looking at excerpts from a brilliant narrative script titled The Aesthetic of Silence. And we are tracking two fascinating fictional characters here. There's an 80-year-old woman named Chloé and her 22-year-old granddaughter, Leah.
Right, the core dynamic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to understand them, our sources pull us deep into the real-world history of 1960s Bohemian Paris and the pop art scene of Andy Warhol's New York.
Yeah, the whole cultural explosion.
The lives of cultural icons like Françoise Sagan and Jane Birkin. And then we even get into some heavy post-war philosophy and, believe it or not, modern espionage thrillers.
I know, it might sound like a completely chaotic mix on the surface, like pop art colliding with French philosophy, but the underlying mechanism is all about inheritance.
Inheritance, right.
Yeah, we're looking at how the ghosts of a very specific, reckless bohemian past don't just stay in the past. They actively script the present.
I love that phrase, script the present. So let's start with Leah, the granddaughter.
Yeah.
The script introduces her in this gorgeous classic Haussmannian apartment in the 6th arrondissement of Paris. Honey-colored exposed beams, creaky parquet floors, just, mountains of books everywhere.
The dream apartment, basically.
Seriously. She's 22, sitting in a silk robe, reading an essay on Luchino Visconti's legendary film Il Gattopardo, or The Leopard.
A very heavy film for a 22-year-old on a casual morning.
Right. And the text zeroes in on a very specific quote she's obsessed with. It goes, "If we want everything to stay as it is, everything must change."
That Visconti quote is so crucial. It's really the anchor for her entire worldview.
How so?
Well, it suggests that to preserve your core identity or, your privilege, you have to constantly adapt to the revolutions happening around you.
And her identity is intensely curated. I mean, the script describes Leah's physical presence as a beauty that doesn't ask permission.
Yeah, that phrasing is fantastic.
And the writer explicitly compares her to L'inconnu de la Seine. Now, I had to fall down a massive research rabbit hole on this one.
Oh, it's such a wild story.
It is. The unknown woman of the Seine was this unidentified young woman who drowned in the Paris River back in the late 19th century. And the legend goes that the pathologist at the morgue was so mesmerized by her serene, smiling expression that he actually made a plaster cast of her face.
Yeah, and that plaster cast essentially went viral before going viral was even a concept.
Wait, really? People were just buying death masks?
Oh, absolutely. Our sources on European literature detail how that specific face became a huge muse for the 20th century surrealists. Writers like Louis Aragon and Albert Camus were just completely captivated by her.
Naïmus, really?
Yeah, they dubbed her the Mona Lisa of suicide. But the reason she was so powerful wasn't just because she was pretty. She had this mysterious half smile, a look of absolute beatitude.
It's just totally a piece.
Exactly. Her beauty was entirely passive. It was basically a blank slate.
So, people could project whatever they wanted onto her?
Precisely. It's a beauty that exists completely independently of the observer, which gives it an incredible, untouchable power. And the writers are telling us that Leia moves through the world like that. She is a canvas for other people's academic and romantic projections, but she herself remains totally aloof.
But then you contrast that aloof, blank canvas with her grandmother, Chloe, because Chloe is the absolute opposite of a blank slate.
Oh, 100%.
When they meet for lunch at that bistro, Chez Marcel, Chloe is 80 years old. She shows up in a pearl gray wool suit, an amber brooch, and she's carrying a wicker basket.
And that wicker basket speaks volumes if you know the cultural history.
It does. It is identical to the one Jane Birkin carried absolutely everywhere in the 1960s and 70s.
Right, long before the luxury bags.
Decades before Hermès designed the Birkin bag for her. Jane Birkin would show up to, like, black tie galas in a sheer dress carrying a cheap woven basket she literally bought at a market in Portugal.
The ultimate casual flex.
Totally. So Chloe, carrying that same basket, tells you exactly who she is. This is a woman who, back in 1965, drank champagne with the Beatles in London and ran in the same circles as the avant-garde director Jean-Luc Godard.
She doesn't just remember the 1960s. She embodies the specific architecture of that era's rebellion.
Yeah, reading the text, her accent is described as this thick franglais.
I love that.
Every time she speaks, it's like a cultural geological dig. You know, one sentence unearths a phrase from 60s London, the next unearths 70s Parisian high society.
It's all layered.
Yeah. And I was trying to wrap my head around the dynamic between them. Because Leia's sitting there analyzing Visconti's theories on change, but Chloe actually lived through a decade where society effectively turned itself inside out.
The friction between them is just the classic difference between theory and practice.
Right.
Leia is studying the world, dissecting it in a university library. But Chloe was the world.
She lived it.
Exactly. Leia understands rebellion as an abstract academic concept. Chloe understands rebellion as, like, a Tuesday night in 1966.
And the 1960s that Chloe represents isn't the Americanized Woodstock peace and love cliché.
No, not at all.
The sources paint a picture of a very elite, almost dangerous bohemian glamour. The prime example here is the French novelist Françoise Sagan.
Oh, Sagan, yes.
She wrote Bonjour, Tristesse when she was barely an adult, and it caused a massive cultural earthquake. Her world was defined by effortless affluence.
It really was.
It was all whiskey-fueled debates and smoky jazz clubs, driving sports cars barefoot down country roads at dawn. The absolute center of existence was the pursuit of pleasure.
And we see that exact same ethos in the sources covering Jane Birkin and the French musician Serge Gainsbourg. They were the defining couple of that era in France.
Total icons.
Birkin once gave an interview where she stated, "We are not an immoral couple, we are an amoral couple."
That distinction feels really important. Immoral versus amoral.
It is crucial. Immoral means you know the rules and you choose to break them. Amoral means you don't even acknowledge the rule book exists.
Wow.
They lived completely outside of traditional taboos. The historical accounts describe them going out to nightclubs, dancing until dawn, coming home just as the garbage trucks were rolling down the street.
That's exhausting.
Right. Waking their kids up for school and only then going to sleep. It was a systematic dismantling of bourgeois middle-class norms.
But, you know, the sources also force us to look at the darker, much more destructive side of this era, especially when we cross the Atlantic to the American counterculture scene.
The New York scene.
Yeah, the breezy Parisian glamour feels very different from the world of Edie Sedgwick in New York.
Oh, definitely. Andy Warhol famously called her the ultimate poor little rich girl.
which is so tragic. Edie came from a massively wealthy but incredibly tragic and abusive society family. She moves to New York, chops off her hair, sprays it silver so it matches Warhol's metallic wig.
The aesthetic was everything.
Everything. She walks around in nothing but black leotards and massive chandelier earrings, and she becomes the it girl of 1965, the absolute star of Warhol's factory.
But her trajectory was terrifying.
It really was. She burned so bright for about a year and then suffered a catastrophic fall into severe drug addiction.
The sources detail how that fall was accelerated by a very complex, deeply rumored relationship with Bob Dylan.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah, she reportedly left Warhol's inner circle because she believed she and Dylan were going to make mainstream movies together. She thought he was her ticket out of the underground.
Oh.
But the story goes that Warhol himself casually informed her, while they were at a restaurant, that Dylan had secretly married another woman, Sarah Lowndes.
Oh my God, at a restaurant. That betrayal must have absolutely broken her.
It shattered her reality, and many music historians actually believe Dylan's iconic song, like A Rolling Stone, with lyrics about a privileged girl who suddenly has to survive on the streets, was directly inspired by Edie.
Wait, so he essentially weaponized her own spectacular fall from grace against her.
Yeah, that's the prevailing theory. It's incredibly dark.
Reading about Edie alongside Sagan and Birkin actually made me question the entire romance of the era.
How so?
Well, I was looking at the notes we have on the postmodern philosopher Jean Baudrillard, specifically his theory of simulacra and simulation.
Oh, Baudrillard, that's a heavy one.
Honestly, his work twists my brain in knots, but it seems like he's arguing that society becomes so obsessed with symbols and images that those images eventually replace reality entirely.
That's a great summary, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But it made me wonder, were any of these 60s icons, Edie, Warhol, even Chloé, actually experiencing liberated, authentic freedom? Or were they just living inside a simulation of rebellion?
That skepticism is entirely validated by the script. Baudrillard's idea isn't just about people faking it. It's about the performance becoming the only reality that exists.
The performance takes over.
Right. Think about how people curate their lives on social media today. Sometimes the aesthetic of a vacation becomes more important than the actual experience of being on a beach.
Oh, for sure. Pixar didn't happen.
Exactly. In the 1960s underground, that performative layer was everything.
So the mask becomes the face.
Yes. Edie Sedgwick transformed herself into a physical extension of Warhol's art. She was a simulacrum of a person.
Wow.
And even in Sagan's Bonjour, Tristesse, beneath that sunny French Riviera aesthetic, the characters are trapped in this emotionally suffocating, calculated game where they manipulate each other just to avoid ever being genuinely vulnerable.
It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. And Chloé knows this. At lunch with Leia, she delivers a line that perfectly encapsulates this Baudrillardian existence. She says, "Love is for amateurs. We were professionals of desire."
Professionals of desire. That is so cynical, but so sharp.
It really is.
It implies that every emotion was a curated transaction.
It was an era of profound aesthetic control, which makes Leah's next move at the bistro so deeply ironic.
Oh, right. This brings us right back to the Sol Meunier and the Muscadet.
Back to the lunch.
Leah drops a bomb on her grandmother. She announces she is quitting her highly prestiged philosophy studies at the Sorbonne.
Just walking away from it all.
Yep. She's been reading Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness, and she accuses the entire academic world of living in mauvaise foi, bad faith.
To really understand her accusation, we have to look at how Sartre defined bad faith.
Okay, lay it on me.
So Sartre used the famous analogy of a cafe waiter. He described a waiter whose movements are a little too precise, his voice a little too eager.
Like he's trying too hard.
Yes, he is playing the role of a waiter so completely that he is suppressing his own absolute freedom as a human being. He is treating himself as an object, a robot designed to serve coffee rather than a free agent.
So Leah's looking at her professors at the Sorbonne and basically saying, you are all just playing the role of intellectuals. You're hiding behind dead theories, so you don't have to take any real action in the real world.
Exactly. She believes that by dropping out, she is rejecting bad faith and making a radically authentic choice.
But Chloé dismantled this instantly.
She does. It's brutal.
It really is. Chloé basically looks at her 22-year-old granddaughter lecturing her on Sartre and says, Sartre might have understood the mechanics of existence, but he knew absolutely nothing about women.
Such a great comeback.
Right. She tells Leah to look back at Françoise Sagan. Sagan didn't hide behind heavy academic language. Sagan was a genius at seeming completely frivolous, purely as a defense mechanism to hide how deeply she understood the darkness of the world.
There's that mask again.
Yep. And then Chloe drops the hammer. She tells Leah, freedom isn't invented, it's inherited and ruined.
That line connects directly to the academic sources we have on the female Bildungsroman.
The coming-of-age story.
Yes, but specifically how the female coming-of-age story evolved in the mid-20th century.
Okay, how did it change?
Well, for centuries, the classic male Bildungsroman was about a young man stepping out the front door to conquer the outside world. The female Bildungsroman in the post-war era was entirely different.
Because they didn't have access to the outside world in the same way.
Exactly. Authors like Edna O'Brien in Ireland or Christian Rochefort in France were writing protagonists whose primary battlefield was their own living room.
Wow, the living room.
They had to wage war on their own mothers and the suffocating societal expectations of domesticity just to claim ownership of their own bodies.
Think about the first time you consciously did something to disappoint your parents just to prove you had your own identity.
We've all been there.
Right. And the sources point out how, in Edna O'Brien's The Country Girls, the main character goes out and buys lingerie on Good Friday.
Which seems minor to us now.
Totally trivial today.
Yeah.
But in the context of conservative Catholic Ireland, buying sexualized clothing on a holy day was a massive calculated act of defiance against maternal authority and the church.
And in Rochefort's French literature, her young female characters deliberately use heavy street slang and swear words. They were emancipating themselves from the proper, polite language enforced by their mothers.
I see where you're going with this.
So when Leah dramatically quits the Sorbonne, she feels she is starring in her own modern Bildungsroman. She is burning down the house of expectations.
But I have to challenge Leah's logic here, though. Based on everything Chloe just said about inheritance, is Leah actually rebelling? Or is she just adopting a different aesthetic of rebellion that she unwittingly inherited from Chloe's generation?
That's the million-dollar question.
Leah thinks dropping out is this radical, original thought. But isn't she just trying on the Bohemian mask her grandmother helped design 50 years ago?
That is the tragedy of their lunch. Chloe is sitting there in her pearl gray suit with her Birkin-esque basket, looking across the table and realizing Leigh is just trading one simulation for another.
Trading the academic mask for the rebel mask.
Precisely. She's swapping the mask of the obedient Sorbonne intellectual for the mask of the tortured, Sartre-quoting rebel. Chloe knows from watching people like Edie Sedgwick that performative rebellion becomes its own trap.
If rebellion is just another mask, what happens when you actually need to rebel just to survive?
That is where the story shifts.
Big time. Because right at the height of this intense, layered generational debate, the script takes a whiplash-inducing turn. We go from a moody French indie film straight into a high-stakes survival thriller.
The transition catches you off guard, but the thematic groundwork is fully laid.
Chloe reaches into her wicker basket and pulls out an old, yellowed envelope. She slides it across the table.
The reveal.
Inside is a matchbook from a place called Le Condé and a hotel room key. And she finally tells Leah the truth about her father.
This part is so intense.
He didn't just walk out and abandon them years ago. He went into hiding to protect them. He was a brilliant academic, but he developed a toxic rivalry with another professor, Armand Morel.
And this wasn't just, normal tenure-track bickering.
Not at all. Morel's obsession escalated into something profoundly dangerous. He was going to destroy Leah's father, and the fallout would have taken down the entire family.
To comprehend how someone vanishes in plain sight, the sources point us to the French Nobel laureate Patrick Modiano.
Okay, Modiano.
Specifically, his concept of neutral zones in the novel In the Café of Lost Youth.
I am fascinated by the mechanics of these neutral zones. How do they work?
So Modiano maps out Paris not by its famous monuments, but by its liminal spaces. These are the transitional forgotten areas.
Like where?
Cheap, unlisted hotels, the gloomy stretches under elevated metro tracks, or obscure cafes like the fictional Le Condé. He defines these zones as geographic purgatories.
Geographic purgatories, wow.
They are places where people go to suspend time. You don't build a life there. You exist in a state of transit. And most importantly, nobody in a neutral zone ever asks for your real name.
So Leah's father used the geography of the city to completely erase himself.
Yes. To escape the lethal obsession of Professor Morel, her father had to completely shed his identity. He became a ghost.
He just vanished into the background noise.
He slipped into these neutral zones where the past cannot track you down, but the tragic trade-off is that you forfeit any chance of a future.
Because you can't build anything new.
Right. It is a permanent purgatory, chosen entirely out of love and self-sacrifice.
The sheer psychological weight of that sacrifice reminds me of the Dan Brown novel in our stack, The Secret of Secrets.
A leap from French existentialism to a Robert Langdon conspiracy thriller is quite the pivot, I have to say.
I know. Hear me out, because the survival mechanism is exactly the same.
Okay, let's hear it.
In the Dan Brown book, the plot revolves around this massive underground CIA facility in Prague called Threshold.
Right.
The villain, Everett Finch, is literally using brain implants to force people into near-death states to weaponize human consciousness.
Very Dan Brown.
Very. But the connection isn't the exploding bunkers or the global espionage. It's about what a person has to do to survive that level of psychological violence.
I see.
In the novel, a character subjected to those experiments survives by developing dissociative identity disorder. They create an alternate persona, the golem, a complete void of a personality, just to protect their core self from being destroyed.
They construct a non-identity as a shield.
Exactly. Sorry. I mean, that is the exact parallel. In The Aesthetic of Silence, Professor Morell's intellectual obsession becomes so toxic that Leah's father essentially has to become a golem.
A void.
Right. He doesn't just run away to another country. He erases his own existence. He turns himself into a non-entity hiding in the neutral zones of Paris to outmaneuver a rival.
It's chilling.
It demonstrates that psychological violence in a quiet university department can force the same desperate survival tactics as a spy hiding from a shadow government.
The cost of protecting a secret is the destruction of the self. In both narratives, survival requires you to stop existing in any meaningful way.
We have covered an enormous amount of territory today, moving from the sunlit bistro table deep into the shadows of history.
It's been a journey.
It really has. But when you pull all these threads together, the 60s glamour, the philosophy, the sudden disappearance, what does the aesthetic of silence ultimately reveal?
I think it reveals that history is not a static thing we study. It is an active force we inherit. Leah thought she was defining her own life by rejecting academia, but she was haunted by the aesthetics of Chloe's Bohemian past. Her father thought he could protect his family by erasing his identity, but his silence became the heaviest burden of all.
The ultimate paradox.
The story strips away the glamorous masks of the 1960s to show that true freedom might actually be impossible when you are carrying the weight of the generations before you.
It's about the staggering cost of the things left unsaid. Which brings me right back to you listening to this right now.
Yeah.
Think about your own life, your own rebellions, your own style. If we inherit our definitions of freedom from the ashes of the generations that came before us, the same way Leah unknowingly inherited hers from Chloe, is any choice we make truly our own?
Are we really in control?
Or are we all just actors, playing out half-remembered scripts left behind in the neutral zones of our own family histories?
It is a haunting thought to sit with the next time you find yourself trying to break a family cycle.
It truly is. Keep questioning the narratives around you, especially the ones you think you wrote yourself. We will catch you on the next deep dive.